So when we are freed as a people, the thing that many of the people try to do, like the women try to do, is that they would go and they would get things to play, you know, whatever. They want to be just like the mistresses that they had served, whatever. It's an amazing thing that happened, what we learned from that enslavement period. So therefore, I said, but you see secondary consciousness all the way to modern day literature, up to The Bluest Eye, where the mother of Nicola, isn't that wild? I never blanked on her name. Someone can Google it. I understand fully, you know, whatever, the teaching, you know, you can Google The Bluest Eye and it will have right there her name at the very beginning, right. Isn't that amazing? That what goes on, you know, now in terms of a class, in terms of just simple names. But this woman who would love Charlie so very much, who would not love her child, Nicola, or Pauline, thank you. And so the nickname was Polly, you know? Yeah, thank you. Write it down so I won't forget it again, right? I just haven't taught it in 20 years, so, you know, so, yeah, she got it. She got Pauline. And the nickname was Polly. Polly, right. Yeah, they gave her a nickname. And that was great because they gave her a nickname when she was part of the family. And what did they say? We cannot do without you, Polly, whatever. Tell me about Polly. And it's going to make a connection to their eyes watching God. When Polly orders food for the family, she calls the butcher. She says, that roast you sent me was tough. I want you to come pick it up and take it back. He said, yes, Miss Breedlove, yes, I'll do that right away, and we'll send you another tender one. The power that she gets comes from being a house servant. The power that she gets comes from being the beloved house servant of this family. Stay with me. But when she goes on her own with her child or her children or her husband to the same butcher, you know, and she goes and she says, he gives her the worst cut of meat that he could possibly give her. Come on, right. And does she complain? No, because she doesn't have any power, because her husband, Charlie, does not breed power for her, right, you know. He bleeds poverty, whatever. So therefore her power comes from being a servant in a house. The power of nanny came from being a servant in a house. You know, that's when she had the power, whatever. And this little girl also was protected because she was part of that. Being, you know, finding out at 6 years of age that she saw a picture to, who's that little black thing there, right? They said, that's you. Ah, that can't be me. I can't be a Negro. And you understand, coming full circle, why the 1960s was so important. When people said, if you have any children, rock them in blackness, not because some pseudo-blackness, but rock them in the sense of like, hey, I love you. I love your little black nose and your little black hands, right? Huh? You know, I do love what you look like. I love that hair that knots up, and you can go swimming and it'll knot up again. I love what you are. Because it's better to rock your child in blackness than to let your child at 6 say, ah, I can't be black. But it still happens, coming full circle. If you really read the literature and you listen to little children, you know, still, they did a survey again, did they not? You know, after the 2 doctors had done that in the 60s about children choosing the dolls, whatever, they now choose, yeah. They still do. They still choose the little white doll. Because it still is. So you got to then, if you're reading this, coming full circle, you know she's mulatto, no one ever says it in the book. She's a mulatto. You know Nanny's mulatto, no one ever says it in the book, whatever. So you read passing, go back to 1920s. It's all connected. And all of a sudden, I said this years ago in the class. I mean, I taught 40 years. I said the amazing thing was only in novels that we had novels about miscegenation. We didn't have any poetry about miscegenation, by the way. No, I'm very serious about that. Nothing but passing. Now you do. It's interesting what's going on now in terms of poetry. But anyway, so there we were with passing. You know, you have people, and it has to do with class. Because quiet is kept. No one said anything about Nanny, but she's part of that, what we call the beginning middle class. Woo! You said, oh, she's too poor to be. I said, no, that's the beginning of the black middle class. The black middle class is coming out of the house slaves. Okay? In Margaret Walker's Jubilee, Riley, the one, who is the great-granddaughter of the woman who is dying, right? Right? That's the middle class. They're the middle class. They're in the house. They know how to run a house. They know how to cook meals. They know how to wash clothes. They know how to sew clothes. They know how to make clothes, right? They know how to plant. All this in the house. And then after the war, this is Jubilee. You should read Jubilee. I'm giving you some books. You need to read them. Because to truly understand this book, that this woman decides to write what she does, that she's drawn on all these things. It's not by itself. You know, you cannot read it in a vacuum. You have to go back and then read all the other books that are gone. A simple thing like passing. A woman would say, I am so fair, but I am poor. So what I should do is leave my community and go to a city, right? Okay? And just pass over. I made a statement years ago. I said, half America is passing anyway. If you really look at this country, half America is passing. There's no doubt about that, okay? My father will come home from work one day. He comes in, he says, he says to his wife, I saw Joe Schmo today on the train. I was reading my paper, and I looked up and nodded to Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo looked up from his paper and looked back down. And got off the train at 42nd Street. He didn't come uptown. My dad came uptown, and my father said, Joe is passing. He knew he was passing, but he also didn't out him because he was passing also too. What does it mean to pass? What does it mean to pass over? What does it mean at some point is that's another middle class that will happen in books like Passing, and the other one, that's the copy to that. Quicksand. Passing, Quicksand. You read them together. 2 books about passing. 2 books about the middle class. 2 books about people who came out of being the nannies of the world, right? And they would come out in that time, and they would send their children to school, like Nanny tried to do with her daughter, to become a teacher, and finally to become a doctor, whatever. And that's what they are. And there we see them in the 20s, in the roaring 20s, in the 20s, right? And there they are. One of them will marry a doctor. She's fairly fair. And she only, every now and then, when she's downtown and it's too hot, will she go into some of these stores that only whites can go into, and she'll go in up to a lounge and she'll sit down and get a drink, right, whatever, because it's so hot and no one would know that she's passing, right? And it's okay for her to do that, she figures. She doesn't feel guilty. Then she can go back home to where she lives up in Harlem someplace, in a big place, whatever. The other one, Claire, that's Claire. The other one, who comes from poverty, will decide to leave her area and then marry a white man. Right. And she will marry a white man. And she will then cross over. And she will pass. And this husband of hers will say constantly, girl, the older you get, the darker you get. That is true, by the way, whatever, And he said, sometimes I be thinking you a nigger, And the poor woman will have only 1 child because she figures she has 2. That one little tiny drop might surface in the hair, or the nose, or the lips. Coming full circle. had a student who was so brilliant that he said, bug me in the summer, give me the syllabus, Professor Sanchez, I want to read a book in the summer. Fine. You know, and he kind of attached himself to me, and he really is brilliant to this day. Professor. He came to the class in September, he said, oh, good books. I read them all, ready to discuss them, you know, and I would smile. He used to lean back in the back of the chair and observe everybody else having difficulty in understanding stuff. He said, the only thing that I thought was really kind of passé, this language, right, was passing in quicksand. Who would want to pass today? I said, let's wait till we get to it. As luck would have it, but there's no such thing as luck. I would get my kids to school, come back, get my tea, open the Times. On the front page of the Times, it's this thing about this woman suing in New Orleans to be considered white. She looked white. She had all the things white, whatever, but they said, you got a little tiny drop of black blood, and we're going to declare you still black. Isn't that amazing? So I walked into class, and we was just going on, getting to passing. I said, well, before we talk about the book, let me read the article from the front page of the New York Times and show you a picture. And so the brother stood in the back, leaned forward off his chair and said, touche, Professor Sanchez. I said, yeah, you're right, because it is much better to be white even if you poll in America. It is much better to be white if you're just an accountant, you know. And, you know, if you are a great musician, right? The autobiography of an ex-colored man, if you're the greatest musician on the planet Earth, and you decide, I'd rather be white and a small-time accountant, right, than black and at the top of the world where everybody loves me in Europe and in Asia and all over the world, right, and in America, right, but just let me be considered white. What is whiteness then? What is this book about? You tell me it's a love story, and I tell you it's a murder story. It's about the murderings of a people, and in spite of it, they still came out bloodied. There's a whole lot of blood there. You got to read that blood, you know, whatever, you know. But they come out, you know. This woman comes out, you know. Some of the people sitting there, and we can talk about how they have all those conversations on the porches, but they still, if you listen to their language, they're still enslaved. The language tells you how enslaved they are, whatever. And there's one woman who walks down that path back to that house, right? And says, I'm going to plant the seeds that he never had a chance to plant, right? It's more than just a tree that's going to come up with some flowers, but the seed of change, finally. You know, moving out of just the gossipy porch, you know, batterings that go on when you pass by, minding your own business, whatever, living your own life, and saying that I will not stay in a class, stay with me, but I will go wherever I want to go and participate outside of that black middle class that we all aspire to, evidently, in this place called America, right? And that these presidential candidates keep talking about, you know, the middle class. We're going to help the middle class, not the working class, not the poor, but the middle class, whatever, you know. And people are very happy because they say, I'm part of the middle class. And I say, is that so? Check your finances again, you know, whatever. But, so here, see how we're connected. All the literature that came before will bring us to the eyes of watching God. What a title. This is a bad title. Why are their eyes watching God? What does God got to do with this book? Anybody? Like, you know, when they said, what's love got to do with it? What's God got to do with it? God is all in this book. The Creator is all in this book. You know, if you believe in African religion, it's all in there. From the wind, to the pear tree, to the trees, to the river, right? And being in the muck, whatever, it's all in there. It runs rapid in there, you know. So it's there. What else is there? Their eyes are watching God. What else is God? You know, well, you know, Jody says, I God. You all remember that, right? You know, he said, before he made some great, pronouncement, I God. Isn't it amazing? You know, all of a sudden, this woman is amazing. I God. You know, and he thought he was God. Come on, tell me. Why wasn't he God? What did he do? He looked at the world and said, I came out of slavery. Look at me. I'm going to get in this little old car, this little wagon, with these little old horses, and go and found a city. Now I'm going to go and take a part of the little ghetto, I'm going to found an all-black city. Ain't that something? That's why Zora, although they complained about her, wasn't concerned when she saw blacks doing things. She said, I come from that. I come from that history and history. When we black folks did it. I mean, I come from an all-black town, she said. Not a black Harlem, but an all-black town. So I do understand this, you see. But then he said, this is his land. Goes down, what does he do? He buys up land. You and I know that then she looks at this and he bought up all that land. Go back to the text, I mean, this book is all written down for me to read it, but in terms of time, I want to get in a lot of connected things. I hope you don't mind, okay? You can go back to it, mark the spot, where it is. She's looking at this man, he buys up the land, right? Then he builds the houses, right? The house, right? Then he gets the store, then he says, I'm going to be mayor. He becomes mayor. That's big time, people. You tell me that ain't big time. Coming one generation out of slavery? Come on, people, that is big time. And all the people, come on, love him, but at the same time, they hate him. Why do they hate him? Yeah, there's a reminder that perhaps, he's too close. I mean, he's doing it in a way that the old masters used to do, right? Yeah. The loudest they can hear down there.
I'm sorry. Even with the way he built, the way he prepared the house, how he built it, the way he did it, and the way he moved into the house.